The mission is to get you to believe. This is a mind-controlling cult movement. They try to go for your soul. They're looking to capture your soul because they want you. They want all of you, your whole soul, and they will take everything you've got if they can.
In this video, I'm joined by MLM expert Robert FitzPatrick. He's the author of Ponzinomics, and you've seen him featured in movies like Betting on Zero, BBC's InstaTraders, and the new Amazon Prime series Lula Rich, which is streaming right now. I'm going to be giving away a copy of Ponzinomics to one of you. All you have to do to enter is comment right now which MLM you hate the most. And now my conversation with Robert FitzPatrick. I hope you like it. Robert, thank you for being with me. You are the world's foremost expert on multi-level marketing. I think that's fair to say. Is that fair to say?
Well, I've been at it probably almost longer than anyone else. I've had a broad base of experience, both some personal exposure to pyramid scheme, but through my website, Pyramid Scheme Alert, which has been up 20 years. I've had contact with people all over the world about it. I've testified in 35 or been served as a consultant or a witness, 35 court cases, talked to the media all over the world. Best of all, I'm not a journalist, so I've never been restrained, nor am I an academic. So I'm not limited by, sociology or marketing. I'm also not limited by the rules of journalism, which sort of is about storytelling. So it's given me a kind of freedom to examine and go where most people don't go.
Right. Now, you came out with a book this year. It's this book right here, Ponzinomics. I have my copy right here, which is all bookmarked and written on and whatnot.
That's great.
But this book, Ponzinomics, this is, in my opinion, this is the only book of its kind that goes over the entire history of MLM, as well as the past, present, and potential future of this industry. Tell us about just that title, Ponzinomics. Where did you come up with this title? This is called Ponzinomics, The Untold Story of Multi-Level Marketing. Tell us a bit about the background of this book.
Well, to start with, the untold story, which is the sort of the subtitle of it, in a way is the most important part. Multi-level marketing operates in disguise. Most people think of it as a business. They think of it as the direct selling business, and they often associate it with particular products. But underneath all of that is something altogether different. What I found in all these years of working in this area, what trips people up, what lures people into the trap, what confuses them once they're in and often keeps them in there, is they just don't recognize what MLM is actually. That was the motive for writing the book, because I have constantly encountered this question and this reality that the person trapped in it, the person inquiring about, including journalists, don't know how to identify it. It hasn't been defined. Ponzinomics is, of course, a made-up term. I made it up because I wanted to get to two elements, key elements of it. One is the element of the Ponzi scheme. Pyramid scheme, Ponzi scheme, essentially are the same thing. There are some minor differences in the two scams, but they are closely related scams. And they are both endless chains. They are both a transfer of money from the last ones into the first ones. They're both disguised in some other format. But the idea here is that it's not just a financial fraud, but multi-level marketing is far, far more than that. It's a belief system. It's a body of thought. It's really an ideology. So I was trying to communicate with the title that this is actually a school of thought, and it has a worldview. It has leaders, hierarchy, mission, its own language, vocabulary. And its purpose is to sort of draw you into this school of thought, this point of view of explanation of reality, and disconnect you from the objective reality world. So that's the idea behind it. this is what it is. It's not just a financial fraud. It's really a body of thought, a belief system.
What is happening on the cover of the book here?
It's over a 500-year-old painting by Hieronymus Bosch, and it's a con artist on a street with a cup and ball game. And there's a little group standing around looking at this, and a man dressed in expensive clothing has been lured over to the table. He has money. He's bent over looking, trying to figure it out and beat the guy that's running the scheme. And while he's doing that, a kid, probably a cohort, an associate of the guy running the game, is picking his pocket.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, there are many, many other symbols. Bosch was a medieval painter, and there are many symbols because they used a lot of symbolism. It's called The Conjurer, by the way. So, and that's apt, I thought, for multi-level. They lure you over, they kind of cast a spell, and there you are, transfixed. And while you were trying to pursue this income opportunity, your pocket is being picked with purchases, product purchases, motivation tapes, books you're supposed to read, and meetings you're supposed to attend. So I thought it was a good symbolic representation of MLM.
Well, shout out to Mr. Bosch. I'll be sure to put a link to his YouTube channel in the description of this video as well. I just wanted to say something about the book first before we break down all of the different elements you talked about, this school of thought, it's a way of life. One thing I wanted to say about the book is I suck at reading books, and it's always tough for me to stay engaged with books. But this book, I couldn't stop reading. There was so many moments where my jaw just dropped, because in the past 2 years that I've been doing research and exposés on MLM companies, I thought that I kind of knew to what extent its tentacles reached in society, and I didn't realize how deep it actually goes. And this book shines a light on all of that. And I just wanted to say, this book is an absolute triumph for anyone that wants to make a difference in this space of anti-MLM. Yeah, I just wanted to give you your flowers while we're both still here on this earth, because I get messages all the time and comments from people saying, I was about to join this company, or I was about to attend a presentation, and then I looked it up and your video came up and I watched it and you saved me from this. Or my spouse has been involved in this and it's been destroying our marriage, and I finally got them to sit down and watch your video, and now things are getting better. I wouldn't be able to do those things if it weren't for information available to me, which was originally created and found out by people like yourself. So anything I do and any help that I provide to people, I'm standing on the shoulders of people like yourself. So thank you very much for everything you've done, and thank you for this book.
Oh, well, thanks for acknowledging that. I too stood on the shoulders of other people as well. So yeah, it's a body of knowledge that has built up, and now I think is more widely dispersed, thankfully. But to many people who want to really get the full picture, that was the idea behind the book. Sometimes people don't need the full picture, just they need enough to stay the hell away from it.
Yes.
But for those who are, whose families have been affected, whose lives have been profoundly affected, they may want to know more.
I want to ask you about something that you talked about briefly in the book. Your introduction in your own life to the world of Ponzi schemes, pyramid schemes, was something called the airplane game, right? Can you tell us about that?
Right. So the airplane game is today that type of scheme. Remember, there are no originals of these things. They're always copies of something else. That genre of pyramid scheme is today called gifting schemes. The reason it's called a gifting scheme is there's no product. Instead of my getting you into my scheme by getting you to buy my anti-aging cream, I tell you basically the same story, that the scheme is going to make you wealthy, that's an endless chain, it goes on forever. It doesn't require a lot of money to get into it. You do it in your spare time. You start with friends and relatives and so on. The gifting scheme has the same basic lure, but its story is not that it's direct selling. It's that it's a system of sharing wealth. in which people give and receive. So I'm not recruiting you. I'm offering you the chance to give me money. I'm not getting your money for having recruited you. I'm receiving your gift and sharing this bounteous program. The main thing that I got from it, though, that has served me so well in being able to deal with multi-level marketing is I felt, experienced, tasted, and witnessed the ecstasy of the endless chain income promise. I felt it. I was there. I saw the mania. I saw it in groups of people I knew. I saw people go mad. I was part of it, but it completely distorted friends and family relationships. Some people went so crazy they neglected or quit jobs. People lost friends. Some people got divorced over it, and so on. So I saw it more as a socially disruptive force, but I saw the power of the endless chain promise and its capacity for fooling people into thinking that it's a real thing, that it could work. It's hard to understand it until you've seen it, felt it, at least witnessed it properly. And that's really where that was my introduction. And as a result of that, I just had to know more about it. What is a pyramid scheme? Where did it come from? How old are they? Who invented this thing? And what was that power that captivated us? I just had to know that.
Right.
That set me off on writing and researching. Now, multi-level marketing is, takes that and turns it into a business structure capable of sucking a person utterly dry financially, totally ruining them. And I've seen people lose their homes.
Yes. Yes. The worst sort of fates that can befall a person can be achieved through the pursuit of MLM, that's for sure. We're going to talk more about the brainwashing element and specifically Steve Hassan's BITE model and how it's employed by MLM groups a bit later on. But first, I wanted to talk about the key to opening someone's mind to the ideas that are presented in MLM. And it's this idea of thought stopping. Anything that can be done to subvert someone's rational cognitive thought processes, stop them from thinking rationally about something and operate instead on emotion or alternative facts. In MLM, they will make it very clear to you, due diligence is for losers and doubters. And I did a video expose on a company called ACN last year, but in the presentation, the guy who was presenting to us basically said, well, sometimes people tell me that I went on Google and I looked up ACN and they said it was bad. And, Google is like a bathroom stall. Anyone can write anything. And so immediately trying to discredit any source of information outside of the company. And in this case, he was the representative of the company. You have a story where you did something that I have always wanted to do. And it's this idea of being in one of these presentations and standing up and saying, hey, everyone, this whole thing is a fraud. This whole thing is a scam. Everyone run for your lives, get out. I've always wanted to do this, but unfortunately, I know enough about mob psychology to understand that once everyone is already invested, the likelihood that me standing up and presenting actual facts is going to change their mind and there's going to be this coup and we're all going to walk out is very unlikely. But you have a story, Robert, where you were in a presentation and this is the calculator story. Can you briefly explain what is the calculator story? What happened?
Yes. So I was working with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, and they were doing a piece on a multi-level marketing scheme that ultimately was shut down. It was being investigated by the show called Marketplace, and they asked me to come up and attend one of the recruiting events with their producer who had hidden cameras. So there we are in a hotel room, and the guy on the stage, and his room full there, conference room full of people. So he went on about showing how you just recruit a few and they recruit a few and how it adds up and how much money you would get after each person joins, and look great. Of course, that's just a trick because it can't keep going. And the people at the end are not going to succeed at that. And they're the majority. So the producer asked me to get up and ask him a question. So I stood up and I said, I just saw that you had shown this chart and the potential for recruiting a few people who recruit a few people and how it keeps expanding. And I said, but I have this little calculator here that I just punched it in. The numbers that you just put up there on the flip chart, I just put into my calculator. But I just kept going. You said each one gets 8, and then the 8 would go out and get 8 each either. That would be 64 more. So it'd be 8 plus 64, and then the 64 get 8, and so on. And I said, but in just a few levels here, we'd surpass the population of Canada pretty quickly. And I'm talking about the whole population, the babies, the people in the nursing homes, the destitute, the mentally ill, everybody. We wouldn't have any more people. And it wouldn't take but just these few levels. So how could it work? So I thought, well, let's see how he does that. So he didn't answer, but the crowd fell dead silent because up to then, everybody was so happy, giddy, laughing, clapping at this wondrous opportunity. He was showing them how this was your opportunity to get out of your slave jobs that you're all in, really fulfill your potential. People were just getting happier and happier. And then I get up and, using this calculator, just brought what a downer, brought the room down. So he let a little silence sit there, and then he didn't look back at me. He looked out at the audience and he said to them, you see, that's what I was talking about earlier, about who wins and who loses, winners and losers. You see, and to succeed in this opportunity, this unique opportunity, you have to think positively. You have to have vision. And if you have to go, after hearing this great plan, you have to go get a calculator. So calculators are for losers.
He just sort of picked on you and said, look at this nerd with his calculator, sort of.
This little calculator. And my calculator, which I thought was this great thing, and I had just shown the puncture, the whole presentation, he turned it back around to where, look at this idiot with this silly little calculator while we're all going to become millionaires, and he's going to be over there punching in his calculator.
And he won the crowd.
In other words, yes. And the crowd, of course, loved this because now it defeated logic. It brought back the utopian vision that they were all relishing and enjoying and feeling that they had been saved by and wanted to join in. And as you know, these events always have stooges in the audience that lead the clapping and laugh at the jokes and create the, just like they do at a game show or something. And that's how it went, and it was just perfect evidence of what you just said. It's illogical, it's uncritical, it's irrational, and it creates a delusional reality in which facts, numbers, calculators, correct numbers, mathematics, exponential math don't matter. The population of Canada doesn't matter. It all works if you believe.
That's right. And because that person who was presenting leveraged the emotions and the belief of the people in the audience, you went from being someone who almost opened the audience's eyes to a fatal logical flaw in the plan to being someone who now they looked at a moment later as just someone with a broke mindset who didn't have what it took.
A loser.
That's right.
I was a loser in the audience. Right. Yeah, that's to them. I'm the loser.
I'm a proud loser in that case. Who
wants to be around a loser, right?
Yes. That actually brings me to a point that I was going to make later, but it fits right here, is that something I find so ironic is losers, haters, these are all things that both of us have been called for pointing out the fallacies in multi-level marketing companies. But the ironic thing is, both you and I are exactly what they claim to be while being painted as losers by them. For what I mean is, they claim to be independent business owners with financial freedom who can wake up without an alarm clock. This is inherently untrue. And then there's someone like you, you're an author. this is what you do for a job. Me, I'm a creator. This is what I do for a job. I imagine you also, as part of your publishing, own the rights to your material, your own business, perhaps. Me, I own my own business. I could wake up when I want to without an alarm clock, as they all love to include in their presentations, but yet we're the losers. It's such an ironic thing, we're just hating because they make more money. Well, how come I'm not hating on everyone a lot of people make more money than me. I'm not hating on Madonna because she makes more money than me. I'm sure she does. How come I'm not picking on her instead,
Well, the level of deception and irrationality in the MLM world, it's so extensive that you pull one thread out like that one, where they start calling people who ask questions losers, when in fact the one they're pointing to may personify what they claim they were trying to achieve: independence, freedom, and means of making a living on their own, and so on. And that's just one of so many other examples. The whole idea that you are even a business owner, this classic term, independent business owner, it's beyond irony. First of all, as we know, you're not independent. You've signed a contract with a single company. You are completely dependent on that company. And if you read that contract, it puts you literally in bondage. You can't even criticize the company, according to these contracts.
That's right.
You can't criticize the product. If you can't sue them. It goes on and on. So you're in bondage, the opposite of independence.
Yes.
You're not in business at all to begin with. 99% of the people never earn a profit. So, this isn't even really a business. And you're certainly an owner of nothing. Show what you own. You own nothing. Your franchise or whatever can be taken from you without cause like that. You don't own anything. So these terms, MLM is a sea of these things, and it literally turns people upside down. And as a consequence, they end up doing something like irrational, like pointing out somebody who is an independent business owner, who is offering evidence, hard evidence, backed by facts, and call that person, negative, loser, cynic, anti-business.
Right. When the irony is I'm trying to help them, to push them towards not losing money, which is the opposite, Specifically in regards to independent business owner, or I'm my own boss. I have defined a couple characteristics of why this is blatantly untrue, and I've done I've done debates on my YouTube channel with high-ranking members of certain MLM companies who believed that they would be the one to disprove my theories about the company being a pyramid scheme. And immediately in each of these, I've started out with, okay, do you believe that you are a business owner? Do you believe you're your own boss? And the answer is, of course. Well, yes, of course, I am. And so I point out, you are not in control of pricing. You're not in control of marketing. You're not in control of what you sell. And you can be terminated, which if you were the boss, you couldn't be terminated. And so obviously you can imagine the conversation collapses and we go towards slander and insults and, personal attacks because they can't rebut the claims. And those are the key points that I have identified as to why you are not a business owner, regardless of what the piece of paper you signed says, and regardless of what the people above you are telling you. You're a 1099 contractor. The same as a pizza delivery person is no more the owner of Pizza Hut than the person doing the dishes.
Yeah. You see, what we're talking about again here are elements of deception, elements of misidentification, elements of disguise that are capable of causing people to become almost crazy, to lose their way, and to show up as having been brainwashed because they have been so thoroughly disarmed from their own critical faculties of thinking, objective thinking and reasoning for themselves. And it's very hard to step into any part of that and argue it, because they're not going to argue on facts. And that's why I concluded that the first thing to know about multi-level marketing is that it is a definable thing. It had a beginning. And once you go back and say, where did it come from? Then the madness that it has created, the crucible of deception that it is, the big lie that it is, can actually be more understandable at that point. How old is it? Who invented it? What kind of people invented it? And from there, then as the book proceeds, then how did it get to remain legal, and so on. Then the story can kind of become manageable at that point. But walking into the middle of it and pulling out one fact, or one element of it, very difficult, because you've stepped into this sea of irrationality.
That's right. This is flowing perfectly, because my next talking point was defining the big lie. And correct me if I'm wrong on my history here, but it is a concept that was invented by Adolf Hitler in pursuit of his leadership of Germany. And it was the idea that people don't believe little lies. People believe lies that are so large they seem almost inconceivable, because the idea that the lie is true is more digestible than the idea that someone would try to dupe people on such a large scale. Am I?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. The term was in Mein Kampf. Exactly what he was referring to is not so important, but the concept that he was identifying is important and has lived on, which is the concept of a lie. So colossal was the term he used. So colossal that very few people could imagine that anyone would have, as he coined it, the impudence to distort the truth so infamously, right? So we're talking about something so outrageously untrue that the human mind would say, well, nobody would say such a thing if it weren't true. They wouldn't make that up. Little lies, we all engage in, small lies. Everybody does. Everybody always has, even little children. They start right out. Little kids tell you little lies right to your face. Did you eat those cookies? No, I didn't eat them. And there's crumbs all over their face. So, but a big lie is something really colossal. And multi-level marketing has created a lie that is so erroneous, so wrong, so untrue. It distorts reality so infamously that you just can't imagine that somebody could have made this up. And that's why it confounds people so well. Then you add in the spectacle, and you add in the business suit and the smiles, and the flashy jewelry
and the celebrity endorsements.
And all of that, and that just keeps the big lie sounding even more. I mean, first of all, nobody would say such a thing if it weren't true. But then on top of that, they have the endorsements, and I saw the car. It drives this, Escalade or Maserati or whatever, and he is making money. But how he made money, even that may not be real.
Right. Moving on from the big lie. Now that we understand what the big lie is in concept, I want to talk about defining MLM and defining pyramid or Ponzi. Now, in the book, you talk about how a lot of journalists that you talk to don't actually understand what MLM is. And when you start to point it out to them, they come to this spooky realization that the goal they are seeking, which is determining the difference between MLMs and pyramids, is actually an impossible thing to discern. And you talk about the 4 key points: the endless chain recruiting model, the pay-to-play aspect, the mandate on recruiting or the incentive for recruiting to earn bonuses, and the money transfer scheme, which basically means money is not coming from an outside market of people who want to buy the product. It is coming from a closed loop of people within the company, the distributors or salespeople, whatever they call themselves, who are passing money around inside of this vacuum, basically. So in regards to MLM and pyramid, what else am I missing for defining the difference between an MLM and a pyramid. A lot of people say, well, MLMs have products and pyramids are just money.
A pyramid scheme has nothing to do with product. It could have a product. It doesn't have to have a product. The pyramid is a system. It might include a product. That's a prop. It's not an essential element of it. You could give money and get a product and still enter into the scheme. Bernie Madoff ran the Ponzi scheme. You gave him your money. He gave you a contract. It makes it, it kind of looked like you had an investment portfolio, and he said he was trading stocks and so on. There weren't any there. So the product can simply be part of the scheme, part of the mechanism of the pyramid. The pyramid essentials are the four you identified. That's all. The rest of it are non-essential characteristics. So when someone seizes upon that if it had a product, but the most obvious rebuttal to that, there have been about 30 MLMs that have been shut down by the Federal Trade Commission for operating as pyramid schemes since around 1975. That's a long time. But 30 of them several of them were fairly large, hundreds of thousands of people. All of them sold products. All of them. So there's nothing in even the background or the history of prosecution of MLMs that says if you have a product, it's not a pyramid scheme. Nobody in law would ever agree to that because, well, we have the evidence. Yes. 30 of them got shut down. They all sold products.
Well, every time I say to someone who is pro MLM, every time I say, well, consider every company that's being shut down for being a pyramid scheme. Vima is a great example. It's a modern example. Young people still remember Vima. Some of Vima's leaders have gone on to go and be involved in other prevalent and popular schemes today. With Vima, up until the day Vima was shut down for being a pyramid scheme, it was another legitimate multi-level marketing company. And the deflections I receive on this point are things like, oh, well, it's the bad apples argument. They did it the wrong way, or, the CEO was maybe doing some things with the money and he ruined it for everyone. But in actuality, this idea that pyramids are something where it's an exchange of money with no product or service, and MLMs are something where there's an optional recruiting aspect, but we sell products, and that's what makes it legal. It's not true. It's factually
untrue.
Yeah, there is no difference. There is no difference between a multi-level marketing company that is considered legitimate and an illegal pyramid scheme, except for the fact that the FTC or the Department of Justice or whichever governing body won't prosecute an MLM company for reasons tied to deep political ties, lobbying, what you call in the book, you have a chapter called boodling and bribing. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, of course. And you just said it too very well. Vima and others that have been prosecuted as pyramid schemes. Of course, they had products. I can't remember how long Vima operated, but several others that I am familiar with that were shut down had operated for years and had churned through hundreds of thousands of people as legitimate multi-level marketing companies. Some of them were members of the Direct Selling Association. Equinox, which is one I referred to in the book, was a member of the DSA. It had been given all this ranking by the Inc. magazine as one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America, I think 7 years in a row or several years in a row. So it's simply an irrelevant element. It's simply an element. It's part of a disguise.
Yes.
It's not fundamental. Yes. So it's just an incorrect, or you might say uninformed critique for someone to say that. Where did people get that idea? Well, of course, people in the schemes, as you said, make up this broad array of defensive comments that stop your thoughts. And that's one of them. But go back and examine it. It can't be a pyramid scheme, sells products. That sounds good. Sounds good.
Right.
Okay, move on.
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute. If you go back, you find, no, that statement doesn't hold water. It's not even true.
the theory of an MLM company being a pyramid, it borders on conspiracy theory in the eyes of many people because, well, it's legal. They had such and such celebrity that was speaking at their event. They were in said magazine or website or whatever. There's no vindication for someone who's doing this type of work to expose these companies. I think in the book you mentioned how it is it has been a lonely and isolating conquest for you because there's never any acknowledgement that any wrongdoing was ever done. Often these companies, when they are shut down, get the equivalent of a wag of the finger or a slap on the wrist with a fine. It's inconsequential compared to how much money they make. And they have no barriers in their way when it comes to just branching off and rebranding or starting a new company, not to mention the legal mess that you can get yourself caught up in. I know you have experience with that. You were a part of a suit that went on for 5 years. That was Omnitrition, am I correct?
MetaFast,
right, sorry. It's tough because here we are, logical thinking people, we know we are right, and yet there's no vindication except for what heartwarming feeling we get from knowing that we helped save somebody's well-being or livelihood.
And that is starting to change, though. I mean, I've been at, as I said at the beginning, that I've been at this a long time.
Yeah,
that was certainly true. That was definitely true. And in general, that is true. But then again, things come along, like the John Oliver show. And that show is now on YouTube, and it's been seen, I think, last time I looked, over 30 million
That's
views.
Right.
30 million views. What does he say? Of course, he says it brilliantly, succinctly, with humor. I mean, in the John Oliver style. But what does he say? All MLMs are fraud, scams, pyramid schemes, all of them. And they're absurd pyramid schemes. And that their claim to be direct selling is not true. Their claim to make an income opportunity is not true. He shows how absurd and how cruel some of them are. He revealed it. It took me a book to say sort of the same thing. But that's why I say this is not rocket science. Just break the spell, go back, look where it started, just track it rationally like you would any other thing, a virus or any other element that's in our society. And the obvious truth of this scam. The thing is, it's gotten so big. It's been allowed to be so big. And there's so many people implicated now that to blow the whistle on it is just beyond what many people would ever even think of doing.
Yes.
So it's easier just to cast the truth teller as a negative thinker, crackpot, something like that, some vindictive person who has some kind of bitter, some kind of score to settle or something like that, rather than just go look at the facts.
I can only imagine how good that feels to you, because since I started making these videos, there was already a burgeoning community of anti-MLM creators, and I already knew, MLM is nonsense. You've been at this for such a long time, where 10 years ago, we couldn't have even had this conversation, and you were, you're just a socialist who hates success and prosperity and whatever. But now you yourself, as someone who's been fighting this battle since basically the beginning, you are able to see the cultural zeitgeist around MLMs changing. And I can confirm to you that when people talk about MLM now, you probably are more likely to hear, oh yeah, a pyramid scheme, right? Versus someone who's going to defend it. I notice nowadays the only people who really defend it are people in it.
Yes. And the media contacts that I get, before I was always put on the defense. Why are you against multi-level marketing? It's growing at X% every year and has these endorsers and so on. We're doing a story on it, but we saw that you're a quote critic. So what's wrong with it? I don't know if you've ever seen Martin Short. He has this little character called Jiminy Glick. And
I like that character. He's funny.
Oh, God. And he's a celebrity interviewer.
Yeah, he's so funny.
Mel Brooks. He has Mel Brooks on there.
Oh, yes.
Mel Brooks, what have you got against the Nazi?
Yeah, he says, what's your beef with the Nazis?
What's your beef with the Nazis? So, that's kind of the way I was sort of cast, that people would interview me like, what's your beef with multi-level? Like, why are you against frauds like that? Like I
Yes.
would have to explain or justify why a human being would be outraged and, about these things.
Well,
Now we'll say it's very different. What most reporters that contact me now, they've already gotten that it's a scam and a fraud. They know that. And they know personally they would never join, and they would discourage anybody in their family, but they don't know exactly why. What exactly is wrong? I need words, I need facts, and because it's so well disguised. So it's a very different experience now to be contacted by the media than it used to be.
yes. And you also point out in the book, the title of anti-MLM is almost an absurd title for someone to wear. Well, it is, because it's like saying you're anti-murder or anti-human trafficking,
right.
it's just something that's inherently wrong. It's inherently deceptive. The statistics for people suffering losses, whether be it financial, interpersonal, emotional, the losses in MLM maintain a higher guaranteed rate, 99%, than probably even something like shootings. There's probably more people that get shot and survive than there are people that go join an MLM and don't, you get what I'm saying, and
Yes,
maintain
yeah.
and don't lose their money. As a matter of fact, that is true. So think about that. You have something with a more fixed and secure and consistent failure rate than even the most blatant attempts at harming people, like shooting.
Well, again, as stripping MLM of its disguise, which is, it's hard to even get the language for this. Failure rate, even that, which I say all the time too, is not really quite correct, because the scheme is designed for you to fail. The scheme is based on failing. So the money you lose and become a failure is the revenue of the company. The profit that the company receives is from your losses, and the profit that the people who are the top distributors, recruiters, who are put forth as role models, their wealth comes from your loss too. It's not like there's a competitive market here. It's not that the swiftest win the race. This is a trap, a very calculated trap, very well designed, elegantly designed, integrated, disguised, that you've stepped into, and you will lose. So to document it as a failure rate does, in a way, mislead. And as I say, I use it too, but it is a misleading thing, because it's hard for people to grasp that they were lured in there to lose. That's the goal of the business.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be. And that is the business. And that's why I said, and I think I said this in the book somewhere, that the commodity of MLM is you and your losses. That's what's being churned and used, and that's the fuel, that's the commodity. The product, the anti-aging cream, the whatever, the travel service and all, that's just fluff in disguise. That's just props, that's the smoke machine.
I've said in my videos before, the only get-rich-quick scheme is selling a get-rich-quick scheme.
Exactly.
Yeah. This next talking point I was actually encouraged to include by our friend Doug Brooks. And this is the idea of MLM as direct selling. Now, the stats show that direct selling, a person selling a product or service directly to another human being and earning a commission, accounts for around 1% of all sales made in North America. If MLM was in fact just direct selling, like a lot of people in the industry claim. A lot of people will say, oh yeah, my wife, she's in a direct selling company. They won't say it's an MLM company. They use these terms sort of interchangeably. If it was in fact direct selling, wouldn't there then be a conflict of interest between recruiting and selling? Let's take something that is actually direct selling that still exists today, something that you still do need to use direct sales for. Frankly, the only thing I can think of where direct selling is still the best model for this product or industry, is selling drugs. Even marijuana now you can buy from a store. So what other thing aside from illegal drugs do you need to contact an individual person and meet up with them and make a purchase? So that's an idea of direct selling, is a drug dealer. Now, a drug dealer recruiting more people who are going to sell the same product and steal market share from them obviously is not in their best financial interest. So the idea of MLM and this optional recruiting element just being a part of a direct sales company, well, MLM and direct sales couldn't be more at odds with each other in what they are trying to accomplish. If you were truly a direct salesperson, you would want to have a reasonably fair chance at success. And if you have 1,000 people selling the same thing you're selling in a given market, it's going to be harder for you, regardless of how competitive your prices are and regardless of how good the product is. And that's because no matter how good it is, it's always going to be easier to sell the dream. And so regardless of what the intention is when an MLM company is made, regardless of if someone joins with the hope of actually selling product, it is inevitably doomed to devolve into just another, hey girl, want to join my business?
Yeah, this is so fundamental again, and it's amazing that it eludes so many people. I think one reason it eludes people is many people don't have any experience with actual direct selling. So when the company comes along and tells you it's direct selling, you're going to be selling this facial cream or whatever, weight loss, and then tell you right off the bat, go out and recruit your next door neighbor to become a salesperson. The idea that you would recruit your next door neighbor who would then become a competitive retailer right next door to you doesn't occur to people because I think they've never had the experience of direct selling. They don't know. As you pointed out, direct selling almost doesn't exist anymore. There, even in my lifetime, there used to be people that actually came to our door when I was a kid, knocked on the door, strangers, and sold things. And there were other products, and a little of this still exists. It's usually kind of shady, but there is still some people selling insurance coming to your house, particularly Medicare insurance, which is very complicated. But even that you can buy online now. There are a few places. Home improvements, you may get somebody come out and solicit you about, making it. These are rare things, and they're not usually household commodity type things. They're not right. They're not things that you could just as easily buy in a store or buy on, at Costco or on Amazon. So
for products, it's obsolete. Is that fair to say? For products, direct selling is an obsolete business model. Back in the days of the milkman coming to your door, which was long before even I was born, that just doesn't happen anymore. And truly,
no, there's no need for it. Yeah, people don't have time. They're not at home. It doesn't work. It's just then it went away. It went away. So this always amazed me that when I read this history of these judges and attorneys and even regulators talking about millions of direct sellers in America, you say, where are they? If there are that many direct sellers, wouldn't they be at my doorstep all day long, every one of them? Yes. I never see them. So the absurdity of this is not grasped. It's right there on the surface. Go recruit your competitor?
Yes.
What would you do?
If retail sales was truly the goal, recruiting would actually be discouraged.
Of course. I mean, just to use your drug dealer analogy there, what are drug wars almost always about? Territory. They're moving in on our territory. And you're in MLM, they're asking you, go inside your territory, create more and more and more people that would sell against you, sell in competition to you. It really is a joke. It is a joke. Once you see how crazy and irrational, ridiculous this is, it can become funny. It's not funny in how it plays out in real life. It's tragic. It's terribly tragic. But when you step back and think about it and talk about it, it really is a big joke played on on people. And it shows how many people really have no direct experience with business or the elements, the plain elements of business.
Absolutely. And in the past, when people were hurt by an MLM company, they didn't have any sort of recourse. They had no one they could go to. They had no forum that they could talk about it on. And I think now with the internet, I've seen it on Instagram, so many people that have left MLM companies really find comfort and are able to channel their grief into humor by making fun of and laughing at this thing that they were a part of. I've had people where I've been on group chats, video chats with them or live streams, and they say, yeah, you know what? I had a broke mindset. I was a scammer. I admit it. I realized it. And people are able to now see on the outside of it and look back and sort of cringe at what they were doing and use it as a warning sign for others. So in the book, you also talk about how MLMs misappropriate actual business language to sort of twist what is going on in MLM. And one of the things I thought was really interesting was they use words like sales to describe the cost of recruiting someone. When you join an MLM, if you join, don't join, you have to pay a startup cost to join. This is classified by the company in the eyes of the law as a sale of that product or that starter pack being sold to that next person. But in reality, the cost of those products and the cost of now having the right to also sell the opportunity are inextricably linked. So you're able to disguise what is really the cost of a recruitment as a sale.
Exactly. Yeah. So they've expropriated language of business, and we all live around language of business. So it's very disarming. It looks like it's a real thing to call something a sale, to call the profit you might gain or the money you gain a commission when you've actually deceived somebody, perhaps, or they just paid to join the scheme, and now you get a, quote, commission, bonus, commission, sales. Even the word distributor is such a joke word. Sometimes it's called coach, distributor, consultant,
mentor,
or independent business owner, IBO. These are all euphemisms. This is all disguising language.
Right.
The language diverts you. Again, it diverts you and takes you into the fantasy world. You asked me about the airplane game. Originally, the airplane game had 4 levels, and it was called the airplane game because it used fantasy language too. You joined, you were a passenger. And then after you moved to the next level, you were called a crew. And then you became a co-pilot. And when you got to the top, you became a pilot. These are all diverting, sometimes captivating, sometimes humorous, used words, vocabulary that divert you from looking about but what's really going on. Penn and Teller, the comics, they did a piece on multi-level marketing also. And Penn said at the very beginning, why don't you just call it what it is? What is this coach consultant? Why don't you just say what it is? Recruiter. You're out recruiting people. That's what you're doing. You're not really selling, you're recruiting. Multi-level marketing has its own vocabulary. It's very extensive, and they work very hard at this language. But that's all it is it just diverts you from the simple reality that, calling sales.
Yes.
They confuse within business all kinds of terms. If I sell to you, you join up and now you buy product, you've paid basically the same price I paid. It's a wholesale price. There's no retail margin for me to earn on that. I may get a bonus on what you bought, but I don't get a margin on it. And they will classify that as a sale when it can't be a sale. We're both, they'll call it retail. Multi-level marketing reports to the world its total retail sales. How would they know? I join up, I go out and sell it to my next door neighbor. How would they know whether I sold it or didn't sell it? How much did I sell it for? They don't have any record of that. They just make up.
Which is why most of the time it ends up sitting in people's garages in this terrible phenomenon called inventory loading, where In order to maintain their quota or their rank, the distributors have to continue to buy product at a certain volume in order to maintain their rank, which that idea itself is foolish. It doesn't make any sense. And they're not keeping track of it. It's an estimated thing that if a government agency even took the slightest investigation, even, if they did anything, they would see very quickly that, the money's obviously coming from only one place.
Yeah, and they won't look. They don't look. That's what the FTC job is to not look.
Yes. That kind of, talking about the FTC kind of leads to my next point, which is, but it's legal, and the argument that surely the government wouldn't allow such a fraudulent industry to exist for so long. I will spare you of having to give the history lesson of all the lobbying and whatever, but the simple, easily accessible, easily understandable analogies that I give to people when this point is brought up is I say slavery was legal. And slavery was legal for such a long time. And there would have been people who said, you're crazy for thinking that people in slavery are going to get their rights and that one day they can vote and that one day a black man could be the president. This is the way it's always been. There's a whole system at play here that will make sure that this stays the same, and this is how it has to be. This is the law. Now, of course, we know laws are not perfect. Some laws, some things that are legal will change and become illegal. Some things that are illegal will become legal. On the flip side of the coin, only in the past 10 years have we seen both gay marriage and marijuana become legalized. Bernie Madoff, who you talked about earlier, Zeke rewards, these are two things that were huge Ponzi schemes. In a modern age where we have the internet, the entire wealth of every bit of information that's ever existed ever is available at our fingertips within moments. And we still live in societies where a fraud like Madoff or Zeke rewards could be perpetrated. I just wanted to ask you if you'd heard that before, like those analogies.
Yeah, well, all the time, yes. I mean, I as I said in the book, I think, where people will ask me, wait a minute, are you saying you're smarter than the FTC, SEC, Department of Justice, U.S. Congress? I mean, if it were as you describe it, a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme, causing all these losses, operating on the big lie, wouldn't it be illegal? I mean, it's obvious. It would be illegal. Of course, it would be illegal. Unfortunately, no, that's not really true. And we have many, many instances where horrific things have been legal. But I'll go back to even a simpler thing. When people ask me I often get it as a question. I'm thinking of joining this MLM. Is it legal? Is this legal? Do you think this would be legal? Is there any chance that it's not legal? And I have financial analysts ask me this too. Wall Street, do you think this company could be maybe illegal? I always ask, but more for private citizens, individual people, I'll ask them, how many other things in your life are you engaged in where you have to question whether it's legal or not? Is there anything else you do day to day, not just to make money, but to buy things, to just live your life that is questionably legal? I mean, that in itself should be a big red flag to people that this is even questionable at all, But then in the book, I tried to go back, of course, and look at how it did become what we call legal. And as somebody has said, it might be legal, but it doesn't mean it's lawful. Slavery was never lawful, but the US did make it legal. Multi-level marketing, I think, when you look at the history, which is outlined in the book, I think in non-legal terms, because I'm not a lawyer, just to show you how it began and how the political fix was brought in very fast after this ridiculous Amway decision in 1979. There is no law on pyramid schemes in America at all. There's no national law that has the word pyramid in it. And so the legalization of MLM is sort of by default and policy, not really by legislation. So, and how it began is, if you read, we won't go into all of that, but you can see it began on such shaky ground. And prior to that, it was regarded routinely in the regulatory community as illegal, as a fraud. And most of them thought this thing won't last. In fact, the schemers that are running these things know it won't last. And they thought these things are just get rich quick for the top people. And then, they know that either the government's going to shut them down or they'll implode anyway. And they would have imploded, but the government ended up backing them, literally backing them for political reasons.
Right. I have a fun challenge / exercise for us, okay? We are going to do, if you're up for this, we are going to do a little role play. And in this role play, you are trapped in an elevator with me, and I am very pro MLM. And I'm gonna throw a couple things at you and see what you say, okay?
Okay.
All right. Robert, you talk about these pyramid schemes and the recruiting structure and all the levels and how it's so unfair and how all the money goes to the very top. But isn't every company a pyramid scheme? You have the CEO, you have the vice president, you have the employees, then all the way down to the janitor. How do you explain that?
That's like saying a bomb shaped in a ball shape is anything that's round is a bomb. So anything that's shaped in a hierarchical architecture like a corporation is the same as a pyramid scheme. So the shape is not what makes a pyramid scheme. A pyramid scheme, it's the fact that the people at the bottom lose and the money's transferred to the top. The people at the bottom of a corporation, there may be many, many of them, they're not fueling the guy at the top. They get paid. They get paid for their labor, for their time. So the two have nothing to do with each other. It's just they happen to look like they resemble each other so superficially. That's all. In the corporation, you don't pay when you go to work. If you're the one at the bottom, if you want to place the workers, the factory workers, let's say at the bottom, and the CEO at the top, and say that they're in between, there are managers, and if you draw a chart, it would look like a pyramid. But the difference is the people at the bottom get paid. They get paid. They produce labor. They get paid. End of story.
But Robert, you're wrong. There are some jobs that you have to pay to join. Like, what if I was going to become a realtor? I would have to pay to get my realtor license, and every month I would have to pay for access to the listings. That's the same thing as MLM, isn't it?
Again, real estate is not a job. You're working as a realtor. It's an independent contractor business. But again, when you make your sale, there's your money. You got paid for what you did. I can tell you, if you look at the pay plan on a multi-level marketing company, you don't ever get paid until you move way up the chart. So if real estate were to be compared to it, you would have to be the top person of a real estate company in order for that to be true. And all the realtors down below would be losing and quitting and losing and quitting, and there could never be a viable job as a real estate person, just as there is no viable job at the bottom of the the MLM. It's not viable. And that's why people quit. They don't stay in it, less than a year, because it's not viable.
Right. And also in real estate, you actually have to sell a house for there to be any money. You actually have to sell something. You can't just recruit more realtors.
That's right. The guy at the top of the real estate company does not live off your fees. There may be fees involved. There may be, office fees and so on. But ultimately, the company depends utterly and totally on real estate. And the people at the bottom can do nothing but just sell houses, and they can be fine. That's all. They don't have to rise to the top. They can just sell houses.
Okay, I've got it, Robert. I know how to stump you. So we established that I don't own the company, and okay, maybe I'm not an independent business owner in the traditional sense, but since I don't own the structure and the marketing and the pricing, aren't I just then like a franchisee who owns a McDonald's? I don't own McDonald's, but I do own a McDonald's, right?
Well, again, you're comparing a franchise with an MLM.
Well, what's the difference, Robert? What's the difference?
So McDonald's, actually, there's there's a legal difference. A franchise has to abide by many rules, one of which is full disclosure. In order for me to sell you a McDonald's franchise, I have to tell you exactly how many other franchisees, how many other McDonald's there are. I have to tell you what their volume, what their average profit is, what their costs are. I have to tell you about the risk level. None of that occurs in multi-level marketing. So franchise is based on controlling the number of franchisees in any given area too. That's what makes franchises work. Multi-level marketing is the opposite. It's an unlimited recruitment process in which it can inundate an area with virtually everybody could become a franchise. So how many McDonald's can a neighborhood sustain, right? There's a limit. And there's, as we are told in MLM, there's no limit.
Right. Okay, last one. Okay, Robert, so you criticize our payment structure, but if I had Uber on my phone, if I had the Uber app on my phone and I sent a referral code to somebody else so that they could get a discount on their Uber ride, how is that any different than what I do in my MLM business? I recruit someone, they get a discount, I get a discount. It's just referral marketing, isn't it?
It has elements of referral. Yeah, you do refer. There's referring. I mean, you can refer without getting paid. You can refer with getting paid, but that doesn't connect it to MLM. MLM is an elegantly designed endless chain. The referral never ends. It has to expand, has to getting bigger and bigger. And the amount of money that is gained on a referral, the majority of the money goes to the person furthest away from the last referral. So there's where it's really different. One referral to the next, okay, could be a little discount or even a payment. But why would somebody 10 levels back get more than the person that just did the referral? That's a money transfer. That's different from a referral fee.
All right, Robert, you've passed the test of the mental gymnastics in the elevator. Congratulations.
Yeah, I've had a lot of practice.
Yes, sir. Okay, another thing I want to talk about is this idea that when we point out the 99% failure rate in MLMs, one of the funniest things that I've heard MLM people say is, well, 99% of all businesses fail. And this is something that is obviously just ridiculous, because I looked up a statistic recently, and it says for restaurants and bars, which are one of the most volatile and susceptible business models, they only have a 17% failure rate within the first year, whereas in MLM it's 99%. You can comment on this if you like, but I just wanted to bring it up because I think it's just one of those things where, once an MLM gets you in with a morsel of truth, they'll say things that are true. Like, for example, your mindset is important. Then they take this truth and they twist it and stretch it to the point where now they can make you believe anything. And now mindset isn't just an important key in your success as an entrepreneur. Mindset is the key to all success, and all failure comes as a result of a lack of mindset. And so it's sort of this way in which MLMs can take an intelligent person and string them along this sort of yellow brick road of false equivalences and flawed logic to the point where they are not actually selling a product or a business opportunity. What they are selling now is self-improvement, which is this commodity that is unmeasurable and unquantifiable, and you can always improve more. And that leads back to purchasing more of the tickets to the events to gain more motivation and more of the mindset live stream webinars and books and materials and t-shirts. And, we have this pyramid structure with recruiting, but there's even a sort of pyramid, or rather, I guess, feedback loop in a pyramid shape that goes on in somebody's mind in an MLM.
When I, in the book, and you referred to it earlier, Marco, about the conversation, the kind of concocted conversation. It was a mixture of many other phone calls that I've had like this with journalists that call me. And after we break the whole thing down and they realize that the pyramid scheme and the multi-level marketing, there's essentially no difference, they do finally get to this last point about how people are paid in multi-level marketing. And when I explain how the payment plan is turned upside down, so that when the last people in are recruited, the majority of the money on that last transaction at the end of the chain doesn't go to the person that brought that person in. It goes way up to the top. It concentrates the revenue coming in the door to the people at the top, and thereby makes it virtually impossible for this person down at the bottom to have made money. And they ask me then, why would they do that? I mean, I get all the other things, but why would they turn that pay plan upside down? And I explain, well, because that's the person at the top who is really delivering the most value and who is furthering the mission of the company. And then they say, well, what is that mission? The mission is to get you to believe. That's their main job. The people at the top are selling a story. They're not selling face cream, anti-aging pills and potions. They're selling a story, a belief system. And the belief system involves the pyramid scheme. That's true. That's the mechanism for fleecing you, for defrauding you, is luring you into this thing we call a pyramid scheme. But the bigger thing is to get you to just do what they tell you to do and to give up your own freedom of how to earn a living and how to think about the world and how to make friends and how to relate to people, and let them tell you how to do it all. So that's really where all of this phony language about business and commissions and income, it ultimately is all to draw you in, and in which these leaders suddenly become, they have the secret. They are moral authorities. They know more than you. You're lucky you have found yourself into an enlightened club, a special group of people who have a unique plan. Well, this is the very definition of a cult. That's exactly what all cults do. All cults have a fake entry story. Come in, we're going to do a personality test on you. Or come in, we're going to see how, you find out what you could do to improve your life, or whatever it might be. To hear this story. It's all false. It'll always be false. Draws you in, you come in. Once you're in, then they begin this whole story of separating you from objective reality, from your identity. Now, you have friends, and the friends tell you this is a scam. You should get rid of those friends. Oh, your wife is not supporting you. Probably have a bad spouse. Anything you say or do, they tell you, well, that's why you don't have what you want, because you just keep repeating these things that were told to you. We have the secret, and look at us, how happy we are, how wealthy we are.
Yes.
If people saw that, of how sinister this really is, that this is a mind-controlling cult movement that uses the language of economics. So it is often called an economic cult. It's not a religious cult. It's not a political cult. It's not a military cult. I mean, these are all things that exist, ideological cults, but this is the ideology. And in the book, I used the term, it is a cult of capitalism, because it uses the language of capitalism, not capitalism. It's a cult of capitalism, but ultimately that's what it's all about. So the fleecing of people at the bottom, for example, prevents them from succeeding. Well, of course, they don't want you to succeed. You're not going to succeed. Your loss is their revenue. But they've got to get you to believe that you have to keep doing what they're telling you to do. Keep doing it, and don't trust yourself ever.
Yes.
A lot of people now know about Scientology. They know about its mind control. They know about some of the tactics it's been engaged in to silence critics. They know that now. People know about other kinds of cults that have been exposed and investigated. And they associate that with cult. So if somebody comes up and says, I'd like you to join this program, and you go, I read about that, I know about it, it's a cult. I may not know exactly what a cult is. I may not even have the tools for combating all this talk about income and opportunity. But if I thought for a moment that this thing is about trying to control my mind, get control and dominate me, I'd stay away. And that's really the bottom line. I think if people could figure out this, if they could get this, that's what MLM is really all about.
Yes.
And that's another reason why they're all the same too, by the way. The one selling weight loss powder and the other one selling travel services. But oh my God, the top leaders used to be in each other's schemes, because they're both selling exactly the same scam, which is dominate the mind of each of the people they lure in.
Every time I talk about a point and I set you up to respond to it, you then perfectly segue into the next thing that I have written down. And the very next thing that I had written down after I talked about mindset was a cult of capitalism. And you perfectly segued into that. So thank you. In the book, you talk about how they perpetrate this cult of capitalism, this economic cult, and how they were almost nudged into that role by society because sometime after World War II, there was this renaissance of it became okay to sell to your family member when before that would have kind of been taboo. And as time went on, materialism and marketing in the traditional sense became more pervasive. Consumer culture, hyper-consummation, food, clothing, jewelry, you name it. And then you had pop culture figures like Gordon Gekko. More so than Gordon Gekko, a lot of people would recognize Scarface, Tony Montana, or Jordan Belfort in The Wolf of Wall Street, who is a real person. And you had this societal idolatry of pop culture figures like Gordon Gekko. Jordan Belfort and Tony Montana are both characters who, although one is real and one is made up, they're both villains in their story. One of them goes to jail, one of them dies brutally. And yet it seems like everyone in these MLM cults worships these figures and only saw the first 2/3 of the movie where everything was, the rise to success and everything was going great for the characters. And they seem to block out the last scene where the character goes to jail or dies. And yeah, you talk about in the book how society kind of took this shape that perfectly allowed for the MLM cult of capitalism to just stand right beside it and become as American as apple pie. And you had the president speaking at an Amway convention while he was the president.
So I remember the concept of the book is to define MLM. So my whole thing was to step back and look at it. Where did it come from? That was the first thing. How was it invented? And what you discover when you do that is that there was a timing factor, you might say, as you said, after World War II, where the idea of selling, using a scam, a con, that would be sold on a mass base like a religion, but it's all commercial, it wouldn't have happened in an earlier era because it was selling a form of greed. It was selling a form of radical individualism. You're all by yourself, and it's every person for himself, and what you do and how you get it to survive is up to you. There's no collective effort. There's no responsibility to other people. It's focus on getting it for you. These ideas only developed after the war, and as I brought in Dale Carnegie, who sort of taught this as a personality type, how to smile when you're actually selling all the time, how to treat friends. His book was called How to Win Friends. Win friends? How do you, the very
Right.
ideas and absurdity. Friendship is something deeper than that. It's not a prize. Commodification of relationships developed over time. And MLM is based on all that. And its message of going out to friends and family and luring them in and making money on them depends on people already kind of being conditioned to think this is the way life works. This is how you succeed. These figures that you gave, like Gordon Gekko, I think appear in many people as the winners. They are depicted as at first as winners. How their lives play out is seldom, presented, but the fact that they appear powerful, successful, lone wolves, kind of, they did it on their own, the wolf of Wall Street. Gordon Gekko saying greed, meaning personal greed, is good for you, good for the world, and so on. I even heard on this same thing, I'm maybe not in the age group to validate this, but I had read recently that the Sopranos have become very popular now among younger people, not as a mafia story, but as a metaphor for the decline of America, what capitalism now looks like. when, to younger people, a lot of younger people coming out of school, they look up there and it looks like predatory, violent, ruthless, heartless, deceptive, gang-like. And It's no accident that MLM has often been called gangs, adult gangs, with their colors, their product, their language, their leader. They only compete with each other. MLMs don't compete with other businesses. They don't compete with Procter and Gamble or Publix grocery store, Macy's department store, or what used to be Macy's. They don't compete with them. They only compete with each other, like gangs. Gangs only compete with each other. So, and they prey on their own community. That's what gangs do. They are predators upon their own community. I think that, we're talking now at this point, maybe toward the end of our conversation, we're talking about a very deep level about where MLM fits into popular culture, this phase of capitalism that we're in, which has been depicted as market capitalism, not production capitalism. In the book, I told of a historian that said this shift was from character to personality. Character is kind of fixed, morally guided. Personality is flexible, adaptive, and so on. That's kind of what we've become. Commercial values become the predominant values. Success is measured in wealth rather than achievement in family, talent, service. We don't talk about that as success anymore, only wealth. And MLM perfectly captures that tone. That's why MLM is so powerful, I think, because it is like all crime. It adapts. It picks up what's current in the culture, and it adapts to that. So it's very malleable that way. I think that's what we're talking about here.
Yes, absolutely. And I recommend everybody watching this search up BITE model, BITE, and it stands for behavior, information, thought, and emotion. And it is a simple model to explain how cults tap into each one of those elements of someone's life or someone's character or their being to control them. And even when I say behavior, information, thought, emotion, without me even going deeper into that, you at home can think of, oh yeah, I know exactly how MLMs influence each of those different fields. And what you said was obviously spot on, Robert, which is that there was already a societal shift that catered to the philosophies and the principles being preached by MLM. And it's very easy to adapt on a person per person basis based on someone's religion, someone's family values. They call it their why. The mentors who recruit people will often tell them, tell me your why. You want to buy your mom a house. You want to retire her. You want to pay for your grandpa's cancer treatment or whatever it is, right? And they pitch the why as a means of holding you accountable and giving you, some tough love and keeping you focused and keeping you on track. But in actuality, this is a very harmful and manipulative emotional tool that they're using to hold guilt over you when you're not doing what they think you should be doing. Can I remind you of your why if I notice that you're slipping or not putting in enough work? I can use your why to get you to do anything. Oh, you want to do this for God, right? Well, now the MLM and making money, now that becomes the way to get closer to God.
Yeah, well, it sets itself up as that. Whereas, as you know, and most people, if they would go to a job interview and somebody said, why are you coming to work here? And the answer would be to earn a living. But then they wanted to know, no, I want to know more than that. I want to know why you even want to make money. What do you want in your life? And so your tendency would be to say, that's really none of your business. This is a job we're talking about here. You don't get to know my why. That's for me. That's personal. But in MLM, they go straight in. And that's why I said in the book, they try to go for your soul. They're looking to capture your soul. And when they have, and that bite is really just a way, it adds up to a life, your behavior, your time, your emotion. And so this is kind of your life. And what they're really trying to do is capture that life, dominate that life, control that life. And so they will, inundate you with material. I heard someone be asked on a radio show who had been in MLM for 4 or 5 years or so before she finally quit. And they asked her, why did you stay in so long? And she said, once you get in, they inundate you, they flood you with material to learn. And then they want you at the meeting here and they're dominating your time. It's hard to get out of that. And you're swept up into it, And again, that's by intention, because they want you, they want all of you, your whole soul. And they will take everything you've got if they can. They'll take all your money. They'll separate you from your spouse, from your parents, whatever you've got, they'll take it away from you, take you away from it. I think if people grasp that sinister element, that core element that we're talking about here, the control, they wouldn't get anywhere near it. And they wouldn't fall prey so easily to all these financial lures, the flim-flam, fake language, and the promises and the income and the averages and all the other, fake lures that are out there to draw you in.
Robert, what you said perfectly ties into one of the last points that I had written here, which is because of how powerful the cult tactics are, it lays waste to this theory that I sometimes hear online, and it's a heartbreaking stance, which is, I hate MLMs, but honestly, the people who get scammed, let it happen. That's natural selection because they were too stupid or gullible, and so they deserve what happened to them. And in Steve Hassan's book, Combating Cult Mind Control, he talks about how some of the most intelligent people that he's met in his life are former cult members, and they were educated and financially successful before they joined. I've said in my videos before, I think people who join MLMs are not bad people. Largely, I think the only thing that they are guilty of is the fact that they trusted a friend and they had a vulnerability. Who doesn't have a vulnerability? Who doesn't have a why?
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate and very important. I'm asked so often by reporters, what kind of person joins multi-level marketing? First of all, nobody joins. I've never, in all these years, found somebody that, what do they do? Go and look in the classified ads, or what do they do? Go online and say, oh, there's one. I think I'll join that. How would they know? They don't. They are lured in. They are recruited. Almost everybody is recruited. You don't really join. You're recruited. The second thing is, what kind of person would do that? Well, I always say, tell me somebody that wouldn't do it. Because in the years that I've been looking at this, I have found every kind of person, from clergy, lawyers, accountants, financial planners, military, engineers. I can't tell you. Now, these are people not poor by any means, but they had that vulnerability, as you said. Everybody has a vulnerability, or multiple vulnerabilities. Everybody does. I have an awe of this phenomenon. It is something quite extraordinary to watch. I mean, it has grown to these gargantuan proportions. I have seen how it can captivate an individual on such a powerful level. So it is something to be respected, and to dismiss people who are in it as somehow less than intelligent or have low character or, some kind of extreme vanity is simply not accurate, not based on reality. I think it's a projection also. I think many of the people that want to do that are either fearful that they could fall into something like that, or they were in one at one, and they're trying to reject that part of themselves that did get into it. But I also don't think that buyer beware was ever intended. It was about free market stuff of being but it was never intended to be a guard against calculated fraud. That's the job of law enforcement, to protect us from calculated fraud, which unfortunately law enforcement is not doing.
This brings me beautifully to the last point that I want to make. And this also directly ties to the ending of your book. And I kind of would hope that with this video and this discussion, I could maybe change the ending of your book just a little bit. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not part of the official canon, I would like to have an alternate dimension ending to Ponzinomics. And in the end of the book, you talk about how during your multiple decades long crusade through this MLM world. You have understandably, rationally, reasonably lost some hope in regards to things changing because of how really big and strong the industry is. Now, we did talk about how things in the zeitgeist are changing. There's a huge anti-MLM movement. The society at large seems to understand that MLM means pyramid scheme. This new Amazon Prime series that you were a part of, Lula Rich, is obviously huge. People are watching that and talking about it, and that's amazing. To people like us, it can feel like Hercules fighting the Hydra. You cut off one head, two more grow. A company might get shut down, or people might leave it, and then the leaders just disperse and they start two new ones, or they rebrand it, or whatever. But now with the internet, we can play the game that MLM recruiters use even better than they play it. I heard of this concept in MLM called the replenishing market. This idea that you'll never run out of people to recruit because every year there's millions of kids graduating high school all looking for an opportunity, and this is the prime market to pick recruits from. But the same way that that is true for them, it's true for us. We can educate more people each year. All I have to do is make one video about a certain company, and then the next year maybe that company will have a harder time recruiting people. And in the book, you talk about how unless there was a mass movement of people reporting a certain company or the industry at large to the FTC probably wouldn't do anything. Now, in May and June, I don't know if you're aware of this, I conducted what I believe is the largest mass reporting frenzy of an MLM company to the FTC. And less than a month later, the FTC announced that they will be revising the business opportunity rule sometime in 2021. I can't take credit for that because it could be a coincidence. I like to pat myself on the back and think that I had something to do with it, maybe. But with the current FTC administration, Lena Khan, she's younger. I think she's more tapped into the cultural zeitgeist of what's going on. She's not like one of these old congressmen that when you see the video of Mark Zuckerberg speaking to Congress, they have no concept of what the internet is. That, you know, they're asking him, can my phone hear me? Does my phone know when I went to the fridge? They have no understanding. I think she does. I have hope that she will be the one, or it'll be her FTC administration that will be the one to do something. I wanted to know what you think about that. What do you think about the recent announcement of the business opportunity rule?
It does pose an opportunity. It definitely does. And I think this is round two. And I think this round is going to be very different. Before, they mobilized 18,000 cookie cutter letters from, and they wrote these absurd letters, which I recounted in the books, several of them from MLM leaders about how millions of people depended on MLM for income. This is like individual companies would make such absurd claims. There's just a lot more information out there now, and I think the FTC would not be able even to be as complicit as they were back then. So yeah, I think there's an opportunity. There is an anti-MLM movement today. That's for sure. It exists. It's called that. It's got a name. People are in it. There's a Reddit out there with hundreds of thousands of people. There's shows. There's leaders. There's spokesmen. The journalists don't have to call me every time now. They got a lot of people they can talk to about multi-level marketing. So there definitely is a change. But what has not yet happened, and what I hope does happen, is that it takes some political form. It has to coalesce into some kind of power that can be exerted toward the FTC. It can't be completely diffuse like this. It can't be just this amorphous, a video channel here, a movie that popped up over there, a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit. It has to mobilize some way. And I think that may happen. Leaders will have to show up. And I see signs of it. I see signs that is coming, and that it will take its form as a legitimate consumer movement, but it is not there yet. So I should also add to Marco, when I say in the book that I gave up hope, I didn't say I gave up. I
No,
said I
no.
just gave hoping. I
Yes.
continue right on, but I don't hope anymore. And I realized I need hope because, I was committed. I saw the value of what I've been doing. I've had enough feedback. I see the reality of it enough to sustain me. I don't need hope. So, if the business opportunity rule is subverted again and MLM escapes again, it wouldn't deter me. It wouldn't crush me because I quit hoping. I just act, act as best I can. Remember, I've been at this a while, and the book has a certain historical context to it. It's not really future oriented. It's kind of like, this is where we are, and this is how it got here. And the future may be a very different picture in terms of FTC actions and so on. And I could live with that. I could see that, but I'm not going to invest my hope in it.
Fair enough. I have hope that things will change. And I thank you for your tremendous decades-long contribution to that pursuit of change. In the future, there will be a day, I believe, where MLM no longer exists and people will read books like Ponzinomics, because I'm guessing it won't just be Ponzinomics 50 years from now. Other people will have written other books, but right now, this is what we have. Reading this book today in 2021 is a chance to read about the biggest con in human history that is still happening today before it has gone away. This is not like, we read about World War II and it's a history lesson. This is history happening right now. And so I can't recommend this book highly enough. And you have an audiobook version of it coming out pretty soon, right?
Yeah, we have the paperback is what you're holding there. It's also available on Kindle as an ebook, and the audio version on Audible will be out by Thanksgiving, I think. Now at the stage we're at, we're finished the narration of it, and we're just in the editing phase right now. So I think by Thanksgiving we'll have an audio book also.
American Thanksgiving, because I had my Thanksgiving now a couple weeks ago.
Oh, sorry about that. That's right. Yeah,
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. But
by,
yes,
by the end of November.
Yes. But yeah, you guys, Ponzinomics is one of the best books I've ever read, and I'm not just saying that because Robert's here and I'm trying to, butter him up. Thank you so much for writing this book and doing the work you've done, and for talking to me. Genuinely, you're a hero of mine, and this is a bucket list thing to have had this conversation with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Marco. Thanks for the opportunity. I've enjoyed every minute of it, too.
People can check out your website, right? PSA, pyramidschemealert.org.
Scheme Alert. It's an information website on, not about me, it's an information website about pyramid schemes, multi-level marketing. It's a pretty large body of information there. The book is really available on Amazon. That's where you get it.
Great. Okay, well, we've covered all my points that I wanted to cover. I know this ran a little bit long. I apologize. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think we've hit the points. This has been one of maybe perhaps the best interview I've done, where we've really been able to go as deeply as we could into the realities of MLM. So this has been, a great treat for me too. I don't get a chance often to go discuss the book and discuss the background and at this level.
Wow, I really appreciate that. Yeah, thank you so much. That means the world to me. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I read the book thoroughly, and I've done a lot of my own research prior to reading the book about the industry, and so I'm grateful that I already did have a background. Great. I'm really happy that that I did my job okay. All right, thank you so much, Robert, and yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Okay.
All right. Good. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. Wow, bro. Awesome.